your network and building these relationships with people so that they will open up, their phone book for you and give you their contacts as well. And I think they see a longer term partnership, knowing that now I'm getting into syndications.
Right.
That's something that they want to essentially, grow into or know more about. And by them sharing with their contacts with me, I'm able to share with them what I'm going through or where I'm looking, what markets I'm in, and potentially offer opportunities to them as well.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. Yes, aloha, everyone. I'm excited to be here with Zasha Smith, all the way out in, you guessed it, Hawaii. Welcome, a native, and doing some amazing things in the real estate space. Guys, if you don't know who Zasha is yet, you are in for a surprise and a great episode. So buckle up. Well, I hope you are if you're driving. Anyways, Zasha, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Aloha, everybody. I'm doing great. I live in a beautiful place. Sun is shining. Waves are, pounding on the beach. So couldn't be any better.
Amazing. So you are most known nowadays for just making a difference, making waves, if you will, in the real estate space. I first came across you on the Bigger Pockets podcast not too long ago, and you've just been able to be a driving force for a lot of people who didn't know it was possible to have, a huge amount of student debt and grow up, have a career, and then transition kind of in their 30s to real estate. And now being financially free, bring your net worth to, over, 7 figures and doing amazing things, continually growing. So I'm just excited I don't even know where to go with this, but maybe give our listeners a little more background on what you were doing and how you got involved in real estate.
Well, I grew up here on Maui in Hawaii, just a little bit about me. And I grew up with a single mom. It was very tough. We're always aware of finances, income coming in, what we spent. And we lived I moved probably almost every year while in school. And we ended up living in low income housing for my high school years. And that was pretty tough. But my mom always tried to give us the best of whatever she could provide. And so even when it came to going to college, she couldn't afford it. But some of my teachers in high school knew that I had a lot of potential. So they actually came together, offered to pay for one of my application fees.
Wow.
And ended up choosing to go to Cal State Long Beach, where I was majoring in liberal arts at first. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I worked as a counselor because I really liked helping people. So I worked as a counselor in the College of Engineering, and my boss seen that I was actually helping these engineers with their homework. And so she was like, hey, why don't you take some classes up, see if that's something you want to get into? I was like, man, I'm not that smart, but I figured, well, I want to move back to Hawaii, and to be able to afford to live here, you have to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or have some kind of high paying professional job.
Right.
So I ended up majoring in that, graduating, was the first person out of my family to graduate with their bachelor's degree.
Amazing.
And moved home, worked as a civil engineer for 10 years. And I was just, working all the time. So I was working 60 to 70-hour weeks. I then was, at the tail end was a project manager. So I was in charge of construction plans and project management for hotels, subdivisions, and shopping centers across Hawaii. So it was a very, pressing job. And almost every month we had some sort of deadline to hit, some sort of budget. And I was really stressed out. And so my husband had told me this not famous quote, but it's famous to me, but it stuck with me a lot. And he said, they're getting the best of you, we're getting the rest of you. Because even on the weekends, I would just be working or I'd be tired. And I seen my boss going in on Sundays. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm already going in on Saturdays. Now I'm going to be 7 days a week at work. So luckily, my husband had been super supportive. He owned his own company as well. So he's more flexible. And so he said, if this isn't making you happy and it's not making us happy, then it's not worth it. So that's when I started, Googling like every other person, like how to quit my job and get rich. on my company computer.
Right.
And found real estate that a lot of people had owned real estate. And for me, it was like, how the heck are they buying all these properties when it was hard enough for us to qualify just to buy our own home?
Right.
And so from there, ended up buying, going into the rabbit hole of bigger pockets and YouTube, and just, took action immediately. Bought my first flip and my first rental off the MLS,
Oh, wow.
and found a way to make it work. And I netted 103,000 off my first flip. And so I was like, my husband's like, yeah, you should do that more often. And that was in 45 days. So I flipped a condo, bought it for 312, put about 30,000 into it. We sold it at 480. So that's 103 net after all the costs and everything like that. And 45 days. So 30 days to renovate, 15 days. And we sold to a cash buyer and closed.
Wow.
And I only was making 70,000 at my civil engineering job. So my husband was like, yeah, do that.
In 45 days, you made more than you make in a year
right.
at your full-time job.
Yeah.
And this was something you were doing, not full-time, 45, while you were still working.
I was working. Yeah, I was working full-time on my lunch break, going to Lowe's, after work, meeting the contractors, on the weekends, doing dump runs and whatever else that I could physically help with. But yeah, and then so it came to a point where I was then working 80 to 90 hours a week, because now I had this side job, and he was like, you got to pick one. So I ended up joining a mentorship just to get some systems and processes in place. Ryan Pineda's Wealthy Investor. And I'm now a coach in that to help other people.
Very cool.
But after I joined that, it just being around other people that were already doing it and successful, I gave me the confidence to now, quit my job, go into full time. So right now I have completed 19 flips, netted over $1 million in profit over the past couple of years. And I own 16 rental properties on my own. And then now I'm involved in 4 syndications as a co-GP with Emma Paula and a few other partners. So
awesome. Wow. Amazing.
That's where I am now.
And this is all within the past few years, right?
Yes. Yeah. So 2019, I bought my first 2 projects. And then 2020, when the world was shutting down, I quit my job and bought a few multifamilies. And then 2021 ended up doing, what is that? Like 17 more projects.
That's amazing.
And and then getting into multifamily last year. And just right now, I've been able to scale through partnerships. Like the value in your network and connections is so powerful that I think people often overlook that part of it. And that's why I go to, I join mentorships, I go to networking events, even like online, right? We connected online through LinkedIn, and that has been a powerful platform as well. So you don't necessarily have to spend all this money traveling. Like LinkedIn is a lot of your time. Your time is money, but you can connect with people all over the world that are successful. And if you're adding value to them in some sort of way, they're more than willing to help you as well.
For sure. That's so amazing. What boggles my mind is someone who is so busy, has the time and resources. Obviously there's luck involved. I've been involved in some flips and didn't take 45 days. I'll tell you that.
That's not normal. That was, a few flips are like that. And they are like, essentially more so like condos or like, lipstick flip, cosmetic flips. But majority of the time they take 8 to 12 months, I would say.
Yeah, that does sound more reasonable. Obviously, you can do it in much less time, especially if you do have systems in place. There are definitely ways to do it in 45 days, that's for sure. But that's just amazing. And were all of these done in Hawaii, or were you doing some of these remotely? In terms of the flips, or I know some of the syndications you're doing are remotely because the partners I know are, in Texas and Florida and those places. But in terms of your rentals and in your flips, how were you able to do that?
So majority of them were in Hawaii, but recently last year, I started branching out into Vegas, Georgia, and Texas as far as the flips go. And then I just bought a 5-plex in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And again, this comes back to partnerships, networking. I have a really good friend who buys small multifamilies all over Fort Wayne. And they actually were going to buy this deal, but they wanted to stabilize their portfolio at the end of last year. And so they're like, hey, this is a really good deal. You can cash flow $1,000 a month net, but they want to close in 2 weeks. So if you can do this deal, like I'm more than willing to hand it over to you. Then I had another realtor investor friend who lived out there who double checked all the numbers, who already had a contractor reliable who was working on his projects that could work on mine. And then also had a property management company that he was working with who manages like 60 of his units and was more than willing to take me on as well. So
Sure.
I think that is like key, is like your network and building these relationships with people so that they will open up, their phone book for you and give you their contacts as well. And I think they see a longer term partnership, knowing that now I'm getting into syndications.
Right.
That's something that they want to essentially, grow into or know more about. And by them sharing with their contacts with me, I'm able to share with them what I'm going through or where I'm looking, what markets I'm in, and potentially offer opportunities to them as well.
Absolutely. And it opens up opportunities that you never even knew existed. I mean, think about it. You started out, obviously, on Bigger Pockets, you hear about everything. And if you listen to the podcast, especially if you go back like, a few years ago, they seem to be more similar topics. That's just my opinion. But if you go back, 3-4 years ago, covering everything under the sun in terms of the topics. And so you can learn just a tremendous amount about everything. But in the end of the day, you have to pick something to start with.
Right. And you have to, actually line out what your goals are. So initially, my goal was to replace my W-2 income and then also have active income to be able to support my lifestyle every month. So I think thinking about whether that's passive or active, and then how are you going to pay for the passive in the interim is why I still flip, even though I'm invested in multifamily, even though I still have rentals. It's just a ways to support my longer term goals.
Awesome. Oh, so you're still doing the flips.
Yeah. So I have 8 flips in progress right now.
Wow.
All through partnerships. So I think the last question you were asking about, like, how do I manage, the ones out of state? Because I physically am not there. And that is through people that I've met in other mentorships that are already experienced, and maybe they need, the capital, and maybe they need to qualify for the capital because they're already maxed out, or they need help raising money. So for me, initially, I was doing everything. And then as I partnered with people, I realized that there is this need for just capital, right? There's so many parts of the deal, finding the deal, funding the deal, the renovations, and then disposition. So what you do with the deal afterwards. And I found that the capital part was really stressful for a lot of investors, right? When you're on this time crunch and have to raise all this money. And it's not easy for me, but it's something that I can focus on where I don't need to be there. And so through all these partnerships, that is my role. And I focus on, no matter what type of asset it is, whether it's a rental, it's a flip, I'm partnering on an RV park, an office building, now this multifamily. Wow. My role is still
you're all over the place.
Throw that in there, right? But my role has always been the same. It's I focus on what I'm good at or what I like to do, and connecting with people and raising capital is a role that I fill in all these different types of projects.
That's so cool.
So they're the boots on the ground, finding the deal, and I'm the one who's essentially either raising the capital or something to do with capital, and then also managing the deal as far as the holding costs, the paperwork through escrow, any other kind of admin task, and also keeping track of like the budget and the schedule, right? Because they can manage the contractors and all that, but I see like the overall view of where the project's at every step of the way.
Right. And you probably, having been a project manager, probably a lot of those skills transferred over into your running flips, because there's a lot of moving parts when you're doing that, dealing with contractors and dealing with timelines and resources, everything under the sun.
Yeah. And a lot of the people that I do partner with are men. And sometimes like they like to focus on the renovation part, or like they don't really like the paperwork part. And it doesn't have to do with just men in general, but those complementary skills, I guess you could say, it's like taking a load off them. And because people are like, why do they bring you deals and why don't they do it on their own? And that's essentially it. Is with any partnership, you have to find the complementary skills. And once you guys connect and really are on the same page as far as your roles, responsibilities, like what your morals are, where you align, like you have to make sure all that comes into play in the beginning. So everybody is very much understanding of what the expectations are.
Sure. And you have aligned interests. Obviously, you have to figure out first what your skills are, what you're passionate about, what you're good at. And then you can find partners and see who really know what to look for in a partner on a deal. And one other thing that really struck me when you're talking about doing RV parks and multifamily and office buildings and I don't know, everything else probably, and who knows what else is going to come along. I think the amazing thing is that you don't have to be stuck. A lot of people think, oh, I'm doing this one thing, I'm doing flips and that's all I'm going to focus on right now. Or I'm doing multifamily, and that's it. when you meet more people, and I'm assuming this, I think I heard it before previously, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it's really wasn't that you were out there searching for these different types of opportunities. It was just through the people that you met and opportunities came your way through that network.
Definitely. And we figure out pretty quickly if I know what I'm good at and I tell other people that, there's more of those types of opportunities that I can fit in that will come about. Like nobody would know that I'm good at raising capital unless I told everybody. So maybe there's somebody in the room that is looking for capital, and then we connect because I'm open about what I can do or what I'm looking to do. And so I like that you say, there's a lot of people, which is good at the beginning, right? In the beginning, laser focus on, one thing. And then once you got that down, then you can start, branching off or diversifying. But in the beginning, it is important to just stay focused because everybody could get this shiny object syndrome and try to do this and try to do that and like get, 20% of the way here and then try to do a bunch of things. But for me, it had been, I find a deal and then I figure out like what strategy I can use, especially in the beginning. So that's why I was open to rentals or flipping. And even nowadays, whenever you do, and this applies to multifamily as well, whenever you do get a deal, you want to make sure that you analyze it for different exit strategies because the way that the market is now is you have to be able to pivot whenever there is a change.
For sure. And you can't predict that. You cannot predict what's going to be happening in the market. And I think, and I've spoken about this before on the podcast, the first time that I did a fix and flip, and this was many years ago, we were successful with one. And the second one we did, again, with a partner, it sat on the market for, we had predicted or projected that it would sit on the market after everything was complete for, maybe 3 months. That was kind of because we saw other similar properties in the market. That was the timeline. They would usually be sold. There was a demand for it. So it'd be sold in, 3 months average. It ended up sitting on the market for 9 months, which totally killed our returns on that project. It was tying up capital. It was, we had hard money. We had all kinds of things. So it was really, and you can't know. You really cannot predict something like that happening, but you have to plan for it. And you have to plan, at least in your underwriting, for different types of exit strategies. I don't know if there was another option looking back. Had we been able to do anything in that, maybe bring on a partner, maybe sell it, to a third party. I have no idea what we could have done, but to salvage that. But it just goes to show you really do need to have multiple exit strategies.
Definitely.
So are you looking at specific, because I know you're looking at obviously a lot of different projects going on. I know you are starting a fund coming up. You're doing stuff that is, I don't know exactly. I'd love to hear from you. I'm just assuming, is there anything specific, like any specific direction that you're looking to more focus on in the next 6 to 12 months?
Definitely starting the fund. So a few of the people that we partner with as far as obtaining that co-GP position with Emma and Chris Borden and a few other people, we are looking to start that fund instead of coming together, form an LLC and then be in that position, have the fund going already. So we have the money in place to be able to jump into deals. Because I don't know where you stand in the multifamily space, but sometimes when you're raising money for deals, it's almost like hurdling cattle. Like you gotta, hey, you remember the 50 grand that you said you committed, now it's due. And then, I gotta move around money here. And so there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to raising money as well. But so I see me being in more of the fundraising, raising capital for deals, definitely reaching another type of crowd through LinkedIn, working high professionals. Right now, I'm building a lot of relationships through Instagram, which has given me access to Ryan Pineda, Brandon Turner. I was just at his house a couple of weeks ago filming a podcast. There's just so much benefits that comes to, and I know you've felt it. Just through these social networks, you can build real meaningful relationships in real life too. And so 100%. I think through that direction and Instagram, I've gotten a lot of people who've been interested in my deals. We hop on a Zoom call, it's legit. We sign a promissory note that gets recorded against the property, but I'm trying to get these investors. It's almost like when you're in stocks and there's traders, right? And then there's long-term investors. So they're more so in and out. So they like the fact that it's only a 12-month commitment versus syndications are 3 to 5 years and sometimes longer. I'm making that transition, trying to get more of them over and then also attract more people who are already thinking like sophisticated investors
Absolutely.
into the fund. Yeah.
For sure. And I love that you're able to have, I mean, your local people like Brandon Turner. He's such a great guy, and have someone like him local that you can connect with. And, maybe, I don't know if you're part of his mastermind, but just have that type of proximity to people that have been very successful in multiple areas of real estate. But I want to ask you also, just related to that, you talk about LinkedIn using now. I'll take credit for that, bringing you on to LinkedIn. No, but I know you've been very successful with using social media in general, right? Have a huge Instagram following and other social medias, obviously. What has been like the greatest thing that has come out of that? Because a lot of people put a lot of effort into social media and don't necessarily see any results, and then think, okay, it's just a waste of time, or maybe I'm not doing it right. Can you give any pointers in terms of that? And then in terms of, what have you actually tangibly seen come out of that?
So relationships. So even with other investors that I admire, I find a way to kind of add value to them, kind of like how you do on LinkedIn, but I do that on Instagram. So when they post something, I share their posts, or I'll comment right away. I'll share their stories and really find out, how I can add value to others. And then also through my own posts, I make sure to include tips or teach them something, add value to other people's without any sort of kind of expectation back. Like, I'm not trying to sell anything, but if you want to invest in my deals, like, this is what it looks like. So I come from a more genuine aspect where I'm not expecting to like get paid or doing it as a sales tactic. It's more so to build relationships. So people bring deals and money if they want to invest with me, because they get to see, who I am and what my interests are. And like you said, just kind of align with me, because at the end of the day, people invest with other people that they like. Of course, they have to have a good track record, be successful, be educated on, whatever it is they're investing in, but also they have to like them. And when you think about syndications, it's like a 3 to 5 year kind of relationship, especially when you're bringing on limited partners and they have questions. You want to know that this person will communicate with you, keep you in the loop. For some people, it's investing in these, it's a lot of money that they put in. So you have to be good stewards of that. And I believe that the people that have chose to invest with me feel like they know me, right? I'm top of mind because maybe they, seen my email, then they seen me on social media, on Instagram, they see my stories, they see a reel, and then, they see me on a webinar. So I think it's multiple platforms that you can hit to build these relationships, but it's just being top of mind and putting yourself out there to people.
Yeah, that's totally true. I love that. Yeah. And I love your experience with that. I'm curious to know, if you don't mind sharing, like, how has your family's response been to your kind of career transition? Obviously, it sounded like a few years ago you were stressed out, you were working overtime, like your husband's line. I mean, I love that. Like, they get the best of you, we get the rest. I mean, I've never heard that before, but that just rings so true to a lot of people that are working like overtime. I mean, how has that been in terms of your family and being able to spend more time with them? I don't know. I mean, maybe you're working more now than you did then, but
I feel like I am definitely working a lot regardless, but I get to choose when I work. I feel like that overall is the best thing that came out of me branching on my own, being an entrepreneur. My husband loves it. I get to be home most of the day. I get to drop my kids off to school now, pick them up, go to their events, or, go to their practices. And it, for me and them, I feel like has built a stronger bond, because I don't want to be working all the time. When I was working my job, I always had to be at the office. So like, I would sometimes leave before they got up and then come home when they're already showered and ready for bed. And so I think the bond between me and my family has been better. And that's like why we're doing this all for, right? It's like, you think about your why, think about, where you're at in life and what you need to do in order to change it. You can work yourself to death and be like, I'm doing this for my family. But if they never see you, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And so that has been the biggest impact. And, my relationship with my husband has gotten better. I still travel to conferences. I am away sometimes, or when I get, a new project in, I am working a lot, but I get to choose to take these breaks, to do these little things with my kids, to still spend that quality time and be more intentional with my time. So they talk about time freedom, financial freedom. And that doesn't mean like I'm kicking back on the beach right now. I'm on this podcast, wanting to add value, wanting to share and of course attract people that want to invest with me. But at the same time, like I don't have to be in an office. Like I don't have any set schedule. I can
Right.
choose to do whatever I want. And I think that has been the biggest blessing and the biggest epiphany that I had, getting into real estate or any type of entrepreneurship that you like or you want to do, is that you get to create the life that you've always dreamed of and that you want right
Wow.
now. You don't got to wait till you're 70 years old.
That's amazing. And you're making, a lot more money than you used to. That's an added benefit.
Yeah. I still make a profit. So I think that's one thing you were talking about. What has been the benefits, of course, of sharing my story and being active on social media. I've been able to raise over $1 million probably over the last year from social media, just for my fix and flips projects. And also I've been brought probably 9 or 10 deals that I've net profited probably $50,000 to $100,000 each deal through my Instagram. So
that's so
keep
cool.
posting. Start posting if you're not.
100%. I mean, that's so cool. I mean, obviously it's a win-win. People bring you deals. They're making money out of it, obviously, and you're making money out of it. So it's great.
Right.
Such an
and
added
then
benefit.
Other people, you get in front of other people like, Brandon Turner, and then got invited, like how you said, I'm part of his Maui mastermind. And at that mastermind, I was telling him, man, and it was last year, I really want to be on Bigger Pockets. Like it's on my vision board. And, I've applied, they haven't got back to me. And that next week, the producer called me up. He's like, I've heard, from various sources that you should be on the show. I'm like, I know who that was. So it's like, if you don't put it out there, then it probably never happened. But that's another benefit. It's like you'll get in front of all these people, get way more opportunities, especially to, keep building your wealth, and then also add value to other people and be a resource. I think if you're a constant resource for people or connecting them, even if you don't essentially get paid from it, they'll remember that, or they'll, think back to, okay, how else, if she ever asked me for anything, I'll then be able to return the favor.
That's so awesome. It's good to have friends in high places. And I totally relate with that. Zasha, I want to transition now to what we call the final 4. These are 4 questions I ask all my guests. First one for you is, what's the worst job that you ever had?
I was working so my first ever job was when I was 14, and I was working at Spencer's Gifts in the mall. They sell like little trinkets and glow in the dark things. And I would constantly give back like the wrong amount of change. Like I couldn't really think too quickly on my feet when it came to that. So I got fired probably within a month or so. Maybe it was a couple of weeks. I forget. But that was probably the worst job because I didn't enjoy it. It was, something that I just did to kind of try to help my mom out at that time, just get a job at the mall. And, but it was more stressful than this real estate thing, I think, at that time.
That's hard. Yeah. It's oftentimes our first jobs, as early jobs, as a teenager, that are the worst. And we learn pretty quickly what we don't want to do.
I never want to be in customer service, like direct sales. So even now people are like, oh, how do you get deals and you don't like sales, or you're not good at sales? And I'm like, I'm good at building relationships. You don't have to be a salesperson in order to be able to, get into real estate, or you find some other avenue that you enjoy. Because I can do it, but I don't essentially like to do it. And even with the people that I do get deals from, if I meet homeowners and things like that, I always want to be like their last resort. So it's like the opposite effect, right? They're like, oh, she's not trying to sell me. I'm like, yeah, like if you're having a hard time, like here's a lender that you can talk to. Here's a realtor. If you need help talking to your family members, I'll be more than willing to, help navigate that situation. And then if you work with me, I have to make a bit of a profit as well. So it is an avenue, but I want you to be 100% sure that you're ready, to work with me, right? Yeah. I don't want you to have any, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. So.
Right. Awesome. Okay. So second question for you is, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
I'm going to be cliche and say what everybody else says in Rich Dad Poor Dad. It wasn't the book itself. I feel like it was a situation. So I definitely had my mom there for me. And then I had what my expectations of it, what it was like to be rich, right? Which totally changed once you entered real estate, depreciation. Like I didn't know those terms. And even like when, growing up without knowing too much about financing, the first home that we sold, I bought a home with my mom when I first moved home because we could only afford if we went together in on a house. When we sold that house, we made $150,000 each. And I was like so worried about taxes, like, oh my God, we got to pay taxes on this. And then my accountant was like, no, you don't. You lived in the house 2 out of the last 5 years. So if you make, less than this threshold, you don't have to pay taxes. And I was like, oh my God. So I think there's little things like that that kind of related back to the book where I was like, okay, there's something to this real estate thing. It got my wheels turning. It wasn't, like I said, everything in that book wasn't like pivotal, but it got me thinking to now knowing that it was possible for an average person to get into, rental properties and longer term projects that had to do with real estate.
For sure. That's awesome. And you're right. It is cliche, but it's not because, every book should have a paradigm shift in some way or another. Meaning if it's a meaningful book, it should help you to think in something in a different way. And that's just one that really just changes a lot of people's mindset on money and finances in general. So we'll add it to the list. It's definitely the most mentioned book on the show, but that's quite all right. If you are listening to this and you haven't yet read Rich Dad Poor Dad, well, I highly recommend you go out and do that
reminder.
Yeah, right. Third question, what's a skill or talent that you'd like to learn?
I would definitely like to learn how to ski because I don't have snow here. So
there's no snow in Hawaii.
It's not really an option, but I know that everybody tells me your first time you get hurt a lot because you're still learning, you're getting the sea legs or whatever. And I went to the snow. I've been to the snow a bunch of times. It doesn't seem too much fun to be out there for too long. So, but I would try. I just don't want to get hurt while I do it. So I've been really hesitant to try skiing.
Well, good luck with that.
Have you ever skied before?
I've never skied before. I've been in the snow a lot, but never picked up skiing, believe it or not. Yeah. I played ice hockey, but never skied. So there you go. Fourth and final question. What does success mean to you?
Success means living a life that you can be proud of, being around positive people, making an impact in your own community and kind of worldwide, just inspiring others and having that time freedom, options, choices, just all of those things mixed into one. I believe that if you have more control over your life, you will have a more fulfilling life and you get to choose what you want to do instead of being told what to do. And then in turn, spend more time with your loved ones because at the end of the day, we all say we wish we did this, we wish we spent more time until they're gone. And even when it comes to my mom, now I'm able to take my mom out to lunch a bunch of times, spend more time with my sister she works in the restaurant industry. So her days off are weird, not just Saturday, Sunday, but days during the week. So I get to just, shift around my schedule so that I get to spend more time with my loved ones. And that means success.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, Zasha, it's really been a pleasure. How can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want?
Definitely. I'm most active on Instagram at Invest with Zasha, Zasha, or ZashaSmith.com is my website if you want to find out more about how you can partner with me, or if you want to know more about my past or webinars coming up, that's where you can find my newsletter, more about the fund. So stay tuned when we get that going. But those are the two most, but I'm also on TikTok. LinkedIn is another one that I'm being more active on. But those are the best ways.
We'll put it all in the show notes. So you guys find Zasha, invest with Zasha, and we will look forward to hearing more about your story as you continue to grow with this. It's really been a pleasure. So thank you again for taking the time.
Mahalo. Thank you.
And to our listeners, thank you guys for joining all the way to the end. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.